Okay, today we're going to do the bluebonnet cake, and I'm going to start off. I've got a cutter, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just mark my cake with a round, because we're going to kind of make this look like it's an emblem or the state seal, because of course bluebonnet is the state seal for the state of Texas. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write on the cake, and I'm going to kind of burp my bag just a little bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to write at the top of our cake, and then we'll write happy here and then birthday here, or whatever your sentiment is, but I want you to split it this time. So make sure I don't stick my uniform in the cake. I'm going to start off with my happy. And here's the trick. You got to keep it kind of where it looks like it's in a circular motion. Try not to let any of your letters flow down into your circle, because they'll end up getting covered by your border. So now I've got to really work on centering that birthday. I don't know why I'm stuck on birthday. Sometimes I'll write on this cake, "Don't mess with Texas." But the trick this time is to keep it in that circular motion. Okay, so now that we have that written, don't forget to dot your I. Now that we have that written, what we're going to do is we're going to do the base of our bluebonnets next. So I'm going to change from the number 3 that I was writing with, and I'm going to go to a number 8. Nobody's going to see this, but I'm going to turn my cake around, and this time you're going to have to use some pressure, because if you just simply pipe this, your bluebonnet is not going to have much fullness. So now you're going to have to really pipe some pressure, do a build up on that. What I'm doing is I'm kind of holding in place as I'm piping and then slowly pulling out. And I'm going to do that. You've got to have a minimum of 5 bluebonnets on this cake. I know. Thanks, Chef. Driving me crazy. Driving me crazy too. Don't worry. It'll be a trip for all of us. So once I have my bluebonnet bases done, I'm going to go through, and I'm going to do this with a 104 for you can see the detail on it. Again, you want the large portion of your tip facing down and the smaller portion facing toward the sky. We're going to start piping. We'll come up and immediately back down. Up and immediately back down. So up and immediately back down. So I always start the top of my bluebonnets with a little bit of white. And I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do 5 rows on each base. So up and back down, up and back down. I'm going to do probably about 3 or 4 of these. I've got a little crystallization going on in my icing, I think. So I'm gonna stick with 3. Then I'm gonna come through. I'm gonna do the other side. 3, up and back down, up and back down, up and back down. Then I'm gonna come back through, and I'm gonna do the other side. If you have a little bit of something stuck in your tip, just simply take a toothpick and remove it. That's what I get for using old icing. Up and back down, up and back down. And the hard one is that middle one, and it's going to be facing straight up and down. So up and back down, 1, 2, 1, 2. Come through, do the other side, 2, 3, 2, 3. Each time the angle changes slightly. Again, you want the outside rows to kind of lay flat. Not so flat that there's not some dimension to it. And then the last one. Almost there. Okay, so we have the tops of our blue bonnets done. I'm going to change my blue. I used half blue, half purple because truly blue bonnets are actually kind of got a purple tint to it. So that was the way I achieved this color. So now I'm going to come all the way down the base. Real life problems. Okay, so now you're going to kind of have to squeeze it to get the 5 rows in. Don't scrimp on it, because if you do, you're going to lose the fullness of your blue bonnet, and it won't look three-dimensional anymore. I've had people, oh, well, I'm down here, I'll just put 3 rows. And it just really doesn't look right. This is where a little over piping never hurt anyone. Try not to get your tip where you're ruining the Bluebonnet in front of it. It'll just take some practice. I should have really checked my icing before I went along. Still working on the icing, guys. If you want, you can space your Bluebonnets out a little bit more. I kind of like to have mine clustered together because it looks a little bit more like a bouquet. But it does make it a little harder to pipe. Last one. Be careful, don't make your icing too stiff. If it is, then you're going to have difficulties piping this small petal. And if it's too soft like mine, it may start to really flow together. It's kind of what's happening at the bottom of this flower right here, is it's kind of all melding together. So to kind of take away from that look, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pipe a couple of petals to where they're sticking up. That way it kind of takes away from all that running together. Then I'm going to take my green bag again, and I'm going to pipe my leaves. Actually, I think before I pipe my leaves, I'm going to pipe my inner border. And I'm going to do that with my yellow. And I've got a number 16 tip. Think small, guys, when you're doing this. Again, always start at the back. And I mean, think small. It's just a very small shell border. I want to see the tails. Remember, I get really picky about my tails. And sometimes people, you know, they don't like the shells going in, you know, coming down and then going up. So sometimes what I'll do is I will come through and I'll stop right here at the middle, and then I'll come back through and come down once again. That way they're like a mirror image. And once I've gotten there, I'm going to change over to a 104. And I'm going to tie my little bouquet up with a ribbon. Be careful with the tails of your ribbon. Just little short tails on this one, because I don't want them to come across onto the writing. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change over to the 357, and I'm going to pipe my leaves. And with my leaves, this is what they call a ruffled leaf. I'm going to just stick my tip in, and I'm going to push in and out, 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 and then pull it to a point. You have to have 7 of these, I believe. Actually, I think it'll look more natural with 6, so we're going to go with 6. So I've got 4, and I'm going to come through and fill in right there. And I'm going to take my white bag, and in nature, when you look at the bluebonnet, there's a couple of little white specks on it, and that actually will kind of offset your flowers a little bit. So I'm just going to randomly pipe a few little white flecks on my bluebonnet. Try to keep them in a nice dot. No teardrops. And if you have some green poking out the end, you can put a little white spot to cover that. You know, when you see bluebonnets out there in nature, you see some green up through the blue and the white, so don't worry about that too much. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the sides of my cake, and I'm going to drive y'all crazy because this time we're going to do 8 on the side, 8 clusters. And so I'm just going to mark my 8s. Wow, I did a really crappy job on icing that cake. Then I'm going to just simply come back through, and I'm going to allow to divide each one of those quarters in half. Y'all are not going to like me here in a minute. Okay. Because we're going to do some C's on the side of the cake. So I'm going to take my bucket and I'm going to set it up where it's about eye level. And again, I'm always going to start in the back. And I'm going to do my C with a number 16, and I'm going to do mine in the blue. And you're going to do a C going one direction and then a C going the other direction, and the tails on the C are going to meet together. So we're going to do it here down on the practice board. And I'm going to do a little bit of a curly Q on top. I'm coming around with my C, keeping it nice and straight, and a nice little tail on it. And then I'm going to come through, little curly Q on the top. I'm going to come the opposite direction, and I'm going to finish it off. And I want it to almost appear like that's one continuous line. Don't ever do it as one continuous line, because it really doesn't look right. I'll do one for you. And I always end up with one a little bit bigger than the other. So, but when they're telling you to do this, they're always telling you to do it in two pieces. You've got a little more control over the shape that way. I'm going to kind of move this over so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to start right here. I want my tails to meet where my dot is. And I'm just going to simply come through. It's a little bigger than I wanted it to be, but life goes on. And I'm going to do the every other one first. Since I was so big on that first one, I have to be pretty much of the same size on the next set. If your tip gets clogged and you need to remove this, the best way to remove it is to throw it in the freezer, let it freeze before you try to remove it, or you're just going to have a great big blue smear. I'm going to go on with my life. I'm going to come through and I'm going to do this one. It's all about positioning. You'll see this done a lot on wedding cakes. I'm not doing it just to be mean, even though I can hear each and every one of you, yeah, you are. I'm going to kind of remove a little bit of this tail, and when I do, I'm going to come up underneath it. I'm going to then pull it off. Don't try to stick to the cake, or else you'll have a huge smear. I know I just told you to put it in the freezer and then I didn't do it, but I've had a little more practice at removing things, and sometimes it does reach up and bite me in the butt, like this icing is. If you have a large clump of icing on your tip, definitely clean it off before you do the next thing. I always end up with the ugliest fingers after cake decorating because I always have color all over me. Be glad y'all are making fresh icing. Okay, so now that I have that done, I'm going to take my yellow with a 21, and I'm just going to simply pipe a star in the middle of each one of these to cover where the tails came together. And we don't want to point on our star, so just pipe a little bit, make contact with the cake, stop piping, and pull away. Pipe a little bit out, press it down, make contact, and pull away. When I say make contact, I don't mean stick it inside the cake. And we're all the way around. Okay, so once we've done that, now we're going to work on our shells. We're going to put just a regular shell border on the bottom. Many of you need practice with that shell, and the more you practice at it, the better it's going to get for you. So I'm going to start doing my shell, and I think today I'm going to do it out of yellow. And I'm just going to 1, 2, 3, pull away. 1, 2, 3, pull away. You notice how my shell is fitting into the, in between the board and the cake itself. We're almost there. I know, you're like, ah, it's only halfway. To me, that's almost there. The border will kind of frame the cake, and it'll hide any imperfections on the cake that you don't like. By the way, that is a test question, so write it down. Okay, so once I've gotten all the way around the cake, I'm going to come back through, and I think I'm going to do it in a different color. I think I'm going to do my emotion on top. I know, you're like, oh, the emotion again? But this time, I insist it's got to be a spaced emotion. So, kind of start way back here in the back. I'm going to start piping, skip a spot, pipe, skip a spot, pipe, skip a spot, pipe. Again, don't forget that it is on top of the cake, not on the edge. Clean off your tip if it needs to be cleaned. I know I keep saying that, but it will make your cake look a lot better and you'll be pulling off a lot less. The more you pull off a cake, the more smears of icing you have, and I really honestly believe the more frustrated you get. I know some of you are perfectionists. Sometimes with cake decorating, you just have to get over it. I say that as somebody who had to get over it. My husband would leave me with a cake late at night, and he'd go to sleep, and he'd come back in, and he knew that I had pulled stuff off the cake 20 times. Once you get about here, you really have to start looking at your spacing. Okay, so we're all the way around. Guys, don't fill the cake up so much that it starts looking crowded. You want to have nice, clean lines. Well, chef, I really feel like I need to put something in there. If you do put something in there, put something in a light color, and don't put a lot. I'm going to put 3 stars on each side just to kind of fill that area up. But I think it would have looked fine had I not done this. But remember, you are designing this cake where somebody can read the sentiment on the cake. They see the decoration. You don't want to have so much stuff on that your hard work gets lost in that. So kind of please try to keep it nice and clean looking, okay? Whoops. Okay, that's the lesson for today.